the Honorable Robin Rosenberg. How are you, dear? It's so great to see you. I read about you all the time, and every time I read about you, it takes me back into those days when you were in my 6th grade and my 8th grade, when you were giving those speeches on Julius Caesar and Cyrano de Bergerac, and you were hurting over the magazine articles in Harper's and Atlantic Monthly. You remember those things?
I do remember those,
You
yes.
remember those. Okay, dear, you start us. You're 9th grade, you've just left Palm Beach Day. Take us from there.
All right, well, good afternoon, Mr. Greco. And let me just say, it is an honor to be there here with you. And I read about you, including most recently in the Washington Post. And I just was so proud to hear all of the things that Kathy Rampell said about you, because it's everything I remember. But I know you wanted me to talk about me, which I don't always love to do. Didn't like doing it then, don't like doing it now. But you are forever my teacher. So I'm going to follow your instructions or I won't get a good grade. So you want to know what I've done since Palm Beach Day. Well, I stayed through the 9th grade, and after Palm Beach Day, which gave me just an incredible foundation, an incredible education, and just a feeling of confidence to go out in the world and kind of be who I am and accomplish what I could accomplish in my career. I went away to boarding school and went to Phillips Academy, Andover, where I spent 3 years, loved it, continued with my tennis and took up squash and played soccer, and just had a wonderful experience. It was grueling academically, but I felt very prepared for my Palm Beach Day education. From there, I went on to Princeton, and I had 4 wonderful years there, made wonderful friends. I still have about 10 close women friends whom we are celebrating almost 40 years together, and many of whom are now turning 60. I'm actually the young one in the group. I'm still 59. I just celebrated my 59th birthday on Friday. And after Princeton, where I had also a wonderful education and continued my tennis. And tennis, I keep bringing up, it's a big theme because you and I, Mr. Greco, used to play tennis quite often. You'll probably remember who won, how many times you aced me, et cetera, et cetera. It was no fair. You had height on me at that time and I couldn't return your serves. But I was Princeton's tennis captain and led the team to all Ivy champs the year I was captain. So that was great.
Right here, just for a moment. Okay?
Just for the record.
Tennis and your character. All I remember from the tennis court, we played about even. If I was serving well, I won. But if I wasn't serving well, you won because your ground strokes were better. But on the tennis court and in the classroom, if there's one word I can remember about you that burns in my head, it's tenacity. You were tenacious in everything you did. And I can see the results of that. Go on.
Okay. So let's see. Then I took a couple of years off. I knew that I wanted to go to law school, but I wasn't quite ready. So I went to Washington, D.C. and worked for a couple of years, had a variety of wonderful jobs in D.C. And that solidified my commitment to wanting to pursue my education and to pursue it in the area of law, but also expanded it into public policy. So I went to Duke and I received a joint degree, a master's in public policy and a law degree. And kind of the rest is history. Did you want me to take you through my career since graduating from law school?
Take us through the highlights leading up to your present position, honey.
Okay, well, I've been fortunate. I've had
Don't omit, you're being unanimously appointed to the, okay?
Oh, okay, well, we can jump ahead to that. That is true. So, well, I currently sit as a federal judge in the Southern District of Florida, where I actually began my legal career. So right after I guess it's appropriate to kind of circle back, right after I graduated from law school, I had the honor of clerking for Judge Payne. And we all know Jonathan Payne is one of the wonderful teachers at Palm Beach Day. And it's just so wonderful to still be connected with him. And we very much are, given the history I have with his family, and particularly Judge Payne, who really gave me my start as a lawyer, a young lawyer, as a federal law clerk to him. And so that was in 1989 when I graduated from law school, and I clerked for him from 89 till about 91. And today I sit as a federal district court judge in the very courtroom where I clerked for Judge Payne. I have the same chambers, I have the same courtroom. I think of him often as a mentor, just as I do you, Mr. Greco. There are certain key people in my life that I feel, whom I feel, and I've got to get my grammar correctly articulated here, or I just know that'll be a big no-no. And so I've been a federal district court judge. You are correct. I was unanimously confirmed by the US Senate, and I was nominated by President Obama. So I've been there a little over 6 years. And then prior to that, I was a state court judge. So I served in a judicial capacity, but as a state court judge in Palm Beach County, which is the 15th Judicial Circuit. And then in between, I had a variety of very interesting jobs, including as a civil rights lawyer at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. And that is, of course, where I met my husband, Michael McAuliffe. We were both civil rights attorneys, we were married in D.C. We spent a year abroad teaching and setting up new schools, a new law school and a new graduate school of public administration at the University of West Bohemia in Pilsen, Czech Republic. So we've kind of traveled the world, traveled the country, and yet we ended up back here at home. I feel very fortunate about that. I'm with, my parents live very close by, and to be able to have this conversation with you and to look in the classroom there that I recognize so well, because as you know, not only did I and both of my brothers attend Palm Beach Day School, now Palm Beach Day Academy, but all three of our children did as well. And all three of them were fortunate to have you as a teacher and someone who just made an incredible mark on their character and in the success that they all have enjoyed personally and academically. And actually, I thank you for that probably more than anything.
So there you are.
So here.
Now, I'm trying to think of, in these interviews, I've interviewed 4 PhDs in philosophy who are teaching at one at Notre Dame, one at Wake Forest, one at North Carolina, et cetera, et cetera. A number of doctors, lawyers, one MIT expert in hurricanes. In fact, he's retiring this year. But whenever we'd have a hurricane, I'd see him on television because they'd ask him about this. He's an expert. But you're the first one that have exceeded that far in the legal thing. I've had a number of attorneys. So I'm going to ask you a question or two because I don't want to put you on the spot in any way. And if it was my hero, one of my heroes, honey, as I was in the last 20 years, 25, 30 years, was a professor at Harvard, okay? Alan Dershowitz. You, of course, know who he is.
Yes.
And I always, all his readings and everything, I'm a huge First Amendment guy. And to me, again, the First Amendment is not to protect pretty speech, it's to protect ugly speech. And there's that slippery slope there that I'm always afraid. And I have a fear of whether it's a government or private things of gaining power and infringing on that First Amendment thing. How do you see any dangers there or any loosening of those inhibitions on that or anything that we should be worried about or that? Or is it just my own idiosyncratic, what do you call it? I don't want to put you on the spot now. This is, of course, people are going to tune in, they can go and read this interview, so be careful.
Right, be careful what you say. Well, as judges, of course, we do need to be careful about what we say, particularly on legal matters, because legal matters that actually have, real people and real facts appear before us all the time. You mentioned the First Amendment, and I would say more so in my role as a federal judge than that as a state court judge. I have in the past and will continue to have before me disputes that go to the core of constitutional issues, including but not limited to First Amendment rights. So all I can say is that I appreciate your profound interest and passion and concern as to the preservation of the First Amendment constitutional right, as with, I hope, and I'm sure, all constitutional rights that are the foundation of our democracy and that we hold near and dear. I think you just have to trust the system. I mean, there are judges out there every day, like myself, who are really just trying to do the right thing. And I like to come at life with that optimistic attitude, which is that for the most part, people, whether they're judges or teachers or nurses or doctors, that people are acting in the best way that they know. So when disputes appear before me in cases, I take the law as I've come to understand it and study it and apply it to the facts of the case that's before me. And I think that's really what is at the heart of being a judge, is to be impartial and neutral and apply the law. And I would like to think that that is what other judges do, including on the US Supreme Court. So if you have a underlying confidence in our democracy, in the participants of our democracy, particularly in the judicial branch, then you should take comfort in knowing that the First Amendment and other constitutional amendments will be preserved, protected, and applied in the way that the law requires.
Well, let me just say this. I take comfort in this. You will be one of the people deciding those things. And that gives me great, great comfort, honey. If I can think that your fellow judges are like you, then I will sleep better at night, okay?
Okay.
Let's do some reminiscing.
All right.
Reminiscing. Palm Beach Day School, 8th grade. Let's see. The speech unit. Do you remember the speech unit?
Of course I remember the speech unit.
What was your 10-minute speech on? You remember your 10-minute final speech?
I don't remember what it was on. Do you remember?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember. Do you remember?
I did find, by the way, I was going through because we recently moved, and I did find a paper that I wrote for you. What grade was it that we had to write a paper about the person who was most important in our lives, somebody who we admired the most?
The character sketch.
Yes.
Whom did you did whom?
I did my grandmother, Nana Rose, my mother's mother.
Okay, yes.
And I still have that paper. It's graded with your red marker. It wasn't the grade I was hoping for, but I guess it was what you thought. It was fine. It wasn't superb, but it was very heartfelt. I reread it recently about my grandmother, who's no longer alive, but she lived to the age of 104.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Quite frankly, I saved a few other papers that I wrote for you.
You remember in 8th grade, the educational autobiography, where you had to take from all the way through, and that was an interesting one, because the 9th grade one, it was always people selected someone they loved. It was always great. But the 8th grade, oh boy, there was some drama in some of the.
I probably wasn't the most dramatic of your readings, I suppose. I had a little bit of color and flair, but for the most part, wouldn't you say I was fairly predictable?
Fairly, but always predictable in the positive. If you were on the tennis court, I always knew I was going to get the best out of you. And in the classroom, I was going to get your complete effort, always. So in that sense, honey. How about, let's see, what else? How about what do you remember some things? How about field day? Remember field day?
Field day was the highlight of my year each year at Palm Beach Day School. I mean, I don't know if I should be admitting that or not, but something about, well, I guess it was sort of the competition. I mean, I loved competition. I think that's, why tennis was such a highlight for me. I was able, to kind of bring all of that competition to bear on the court, but maybe more so because field day involved so many people. And so it was just exciting, and I woke up early, and it was just a big deal for me. I know we went everywhere from the small field that we used to do field day on the, campus. And now, with the kids, I saw that, it got expanded to the public school field. So it almost felt like a much bigger competition. But back in the day, to me, it was, whether it was the 50-yard dash, which I think I did. I also was the high jumper, and had a bandage around my thigh every year to show for it, because I always pulled my thigh muscle, but that wasn't going to keep me from competing. And of course, I wanted to win all of my events so that I could get the Paul Maddock Award at the sports event each year at Nando's. So talk about, memories and highlights of my Palm Beach day, and to be able to walk back as a parent in the parade, many years later with the kids, was a real exciting thing for me.
Have you stayed in touch a little bit with any of your classmates from there, hon? And I usually don't remember classmates, but I remember some of yours for the simple reason you were in Eddie's class.
Right, exactly.
So I remember that,
Yes. Thank goodness for Eddie, because I've told you this before, for whatever reason, back in the day when we did anything, if we had to go to lunch or we went to recess and we had to line up, they always lined us up by height. But for Eddie, I would have been the last person in the line. And for a fairly, gawky, 6th, 7th, and 8th grader who didn't have like all the confidence in the world, to be hanging out at the very end of the line would have probably just compounded whatever insecurities I might have already had. But there was always Eddie who held up the line. But, I've kept in touch with a few off and on, but none recently. So Lisa Bolt, Susie Neville, I see her mom around town and will always ask about her. I haven't seen Dee Dee List in a long time. She was in the class, but I see Marty sometimes. We're members of the same temple. Karen Hilton, I was in touch with for a while. In fact, I'll just say that the other day I was actually walking on Flagler with a friend of mine, and all of a sudden I hear this, "Hey, Robin," and I turn around and he said, "It's Briggs Kilborn."
Briggs Kilborn.
Yeah, so he recognized me, and I hadn't seen him in a while, but there he was. So from time to time.
Interview 3 weeks ago with his sister, Sarah.
Okay.
You remember Sarah, honey?
I do remember her.
Great. What a great kid. She's a writer now, etc. Yeah, Sarah Kilborn.
Yeah. So Briggs was in town and said hello.
So anyway, Rob, so what else about the school do you remember that strikes you now, even to this day, that any regrets? Any regrets?
No regrets at all. No regrets at all. I felt that it was a very nurturing place, but at the same time, a demanding place. So that is, I always felt comfortable. I always felt safe. I always felt that everybody was looking after me, but I knew that nobody was going to let me slack off. And that had to do with who I was as a person and what kind of student I was, and also what kind of athlete I was. So I think I was there during the day of Ducky Bryant and Mrs. Skinner, and then also Carol Rafter. And each one of them in their own way and in their own style brought out the very best of me in terms of what I wanted to give on the sports field. And I think that is as much a contribution to my tenacity, as you say, and my character, as what was demanded of me in the classroom, with Mrs. Bayless as my math teacher, who was such a wonderful teacher, and you just had to perform your very best to get by. And then you, and actually also Mr. Bayless as my English teacher. And I always, you inspired me to want to be better and to be a good student. I don't think I was ever the smartest one in the classroom, and I don't ever profess to be the smartest one really in any room where I find myself today. But what I always know I can rely upon is that I work hard, I'm diligent, I'm honest, and that gets you far. And those are traits that I think, they come from a lot of different places, of course, your family, but you spend a lot of time at school. So the people who surround you at school, your classmates and your teachers and your coaches, influence how you develop as a person.
Well, I think, they asked, we were doing an interview here last year, and Jonathan Payne interviewed me, as 50 some years, etc. So his last question, he says, do you have any advice for the new kids coming in? And I thought, and I said, yes. And this is something to you, certainly. Work hard and be kind.
Right.
That'll cover a lot.
It covers a lot of ground. It covers a lot of ground. And, you instilled that in me as a student, but I have to say, your role didn't end there. As a parent of 3 children who came to you quite often wondering whether I should be concerned about certain things, whether one child was doing something properly or not, why wasn't he or she doing better? You always had very sound advice. And I would probably sum it up with, everybody has their time and place, and not everything has to happen at once. Give it time, be patient, be there to support, but you don't have to blossom and be the very best at every single moment. In fact, that's probably impossible. But if you build and build and build and grow and grow and grow, it does start to all come together. And that's really been sound advice for me as a parent. And I'm sure you've been giving that advice to other parents. And it's just great, because parents do worry about their children probably more than they should. So to have someone like you kind of calm us down and to keep things in perspective, as opposed to igniting stress or even more stress than the parents already feel, I think is profoundly important, because kids pick up on how their parents are acting and reacting.
Oh, absolutely. And if having taught for 63 years, okay, one of the advantages of that is you're able to look down that long thing. And I remember kids, some of them have retired already, Robin. Some have retired already. But I remember in class, and I remember some of the other teachers would make, boy, this one's going to turn out. You can't, no matter what they're doing, you got to be patient. And so many of them who you thought were going to end up in jail or this, really outstanding jobs. If that's one thing it's taught me, is that's one bit of optimism I have, being able to look down that long line and see. And of course, along with that goes the tragedies that I've seen from, and so many, and so much of that is, and a lot of parents will say that, well, this one, he's never going to do this. I remember your dad came in and your mom and dad were worried about Gary.
Right.
Wasn't doing that great and everything. And I remember I told your dad, I said, hey, okay, he's going to be all right. I said, he's not going to turn it on fire in high school. And in college, he's going to start. I said, wait till he hits graduate school. Your dad said, are you kidding? Hey, doctor.
And that's exactly right. That is actually exactly when he peaked. And he's just a phenomenal but orthopedic surgeon now.
It's not that I have any sixth sense on that. But you know what I base a lot of these things on? And most of the time, I'd say 98% of the time it works. Let me see the parents. Mm-hmm. Let me see the parents. And I'll tell you how these kids are going to turn out. And usually it works that way. You look at your parents. Look at you and your husband and look at your kid. It turns out that I'd say about 98. Every now and then you get that aberration, of course. We don't know what went wrong in that genetic thing, etc. but for the most part, it works. Well, listen,
You're right.
thank you so much, honey. You don't know how, I can't tell you how, every time I read the paper and your name is in there, one of the cases in it, you don't know how proud I am. You don't have no idea how proud I am.
Well, that makes me feel really, really good. I mean, if you feel proud of me, then I've done something right, because you were.
You'll never know how proud I am of you, honey.
Oh,